Everyone is vulnerable to being pinned when life plays hardball, whether it is a physical or mental health condition. No one can stand alone. For those who are not pinned, appreciate that it could be you or loved one someday. So when you see a chance to help someone, please do. They are not weak, they are pinned. Even a slight hand up and a listening ear can begin seriously lightening the load, change, or save a life. Help end stigma. Move from being pinned to purpose. Time for a hand up.
Hello, everyone. It's Jeff Moore. I'm the founder of the Pin to Purpose podcast. And it's my great pleasure today to welcome our guest, Nadine Hennelly, who is a hearing advocate with a rich background in many areas that I'll describe in a moment. For those who haven't seen the podcast before, the goal of what we're doing is to help shatter stigma, to have conversations about mental health and well-being, and to give people a hand up on their healing journeys. So I'd just like to read a brief bio of Nadine, and then I will pass it over to her to give a further introduction. So Nadine Hennelly is a photographer, digital artist, and hearing advocate. A former top model, she spent much of her adult life living and working internationally, including nearly 2 years in Paris and more than 2 decades in New York City. Her career took her around the world, appearing on the covers and editorial pages of leading fashion publications, including Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, Elle, and Glamour. She also spent nearly a decade appearing as a model and actress on The Late Show with David Letterman. After the birth of her son, Nadine stepped away from modeling and a few years later returned to Montreal with her young son to be closer to family. There, she built a successful career as a photographer and digital artist while raising him. At just 28 years old, Nadine experienced a sudden and profound hearing loss. With bilateral hearing aids, she successfully navigated life for nearly 3 decades. But after contracting COVID twice, her hearing deteriorated dramatically, leaving her functionally deaf despite hearing aids. Receiving a cochlear implant has given her the opportunity to reconnect with a hearing world she once thought was lost forever. As she continues rediscovering sound, she has found a renewed passion for bridging the gap between the hearing and the hearing loss communities by reducing stigma, raising awareness, and helping people better understand the remarkable innovations transforming hearing healthcare. She also led community hearing health initiatives, including a hearing screening and awareness program for women experiencing homelessness through Chez Doris in Montreal. So Nadine, really great to have you as our guest today. And why don't I pass it over to you to say a few more opening words?
Okay. Well, first of all, I really want to say thank you so much. I think, for inviting me to be a guest today on your show. I've watched several episodes, and I just think what you're doing is so important, and it can touch so many people. And I really feel very honored and privileged that you've decided to include me in the mix. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
As you said, about my past, I'd also like to just interject that throughout, even though I lost 80% of my hearing at 28, for pretty much all of my life after losing my hearing, I pretended to be a hearing person. I know that sounds strange, but I was in the kind of business that, and not that I'm perfect, but, you certainly had to kind of be perfect, and you had to project perfection. And, I guess that inspires people, I'm not sure, to buy your clothes or to do whatever. But I was terrified of the stigma that would follow me if I would have come forward. And I was, it turned out being something that I really shouldn't have been afraid of. But, we all have our issues. We all have fears. We all have, problems, I guess, and certain things that I just felt that I was afraid that the stigma of being hearing impaired would cast me out somehow, or that people wouldn't accept me in the same way. So I basically just pretended for the entire time until COVID, actually, where during COVID, I mean, sometimes I had allowed for certain people that I was close to, or if I really thought I could help somebody, like, for example, how we met, when we met Audra, we met through her. I did something with her organization talking about hearing loss, but really, I don't think I was comfortable 100%. I still wanted to kind of sweep it under the rug. But then COVID happened and everybody was wearing masks. And for me, who relied on, a great deal on lip reading, all of a sudden, I wasn't able to understand anybody, anywhere, any place. And I had to formally come out and say in public, constantly with strangers and people I didn't know, I had to just say to them, look, you know what? I'm deaf and I cannot understand anything you're saying with that mask on because I can't read your lips. So if you need to say something to me, either you need to write it down or you need to pull down your mask so I can understand what you're saying. And you know how you often reference red bike, moments?
Yeah, right. Yes. Yep.
I think that, I'm not sure. I think I've had so many red bike moments in my life, quite honestly.
Right.
But, I think that in my hearing journey,
Right.
I think that was a red bike moment, in the sense that I thought, oh my God, I have to come out and just be honest and open. And I have to say to people that I'm deaf, and I can't understand them. And I was so terrified. It sounds so silly now. And I'm sure for people that don't have any hearing problems, they probably are like, oh, why was she afraid of that? Why? But,
Oh, I think it's understandable. I mean, there were serious real life repercussions that you were, potentially facing. And then COVID, all of a sudden, for the first time, and I think all of our lifetimes, there was no, at least, I mean, living here in Canada, there were no epidemics that we were dealing with. So I can imagine how much stress that put on you. I'd like to just do a little aside here because you're mentioning the red bike. I actually keep it with me on my desk, right? This is the bike.
Wow. Is that
So
the one
this
that you
is
bought on vacation?
Yeah, exactly. So I always kept this because just anybody who wants to go to our website and read the story, there's a couple of points about a red bike and red bike moment with Muhammad Ali. But this was, I was working with a social entrepreneur in Ghana. I went with two of my kids back in 2016 and met a garbage picker who was supporting his whole family by going to the garbage dump every day and picking up pieces of trash and making these beautiful items. And so that's what it is. It's symbolizing, people have shattered pieces in their lives at times, but it can be rebuilt into something more beautiful, but it's pretty hard to do it alone. You need to, that's the number 2 in Pin to Purpose. And we can't be heroes all the time and think we can do all this by ourselves. So I don't want to steer us off the track here, but since you brought it up, I wanted to just...
And I'm glad to finally see it because I've heard you in several podcasts mention it, and I didn't know what it looked like, and I have to say I'm amazed at how beautiful.
I think it's very beautiful.
You would never know that he built that from discarded, debris and junk that he found, and he came
absolutely
incredible. A compliment to the artist. It's very, very impressive what he was able to build,
Absolutely.
What a great metaphor. What a great metaphor, especially for everything you're doing too. It's just great. So that was one of my red bike moments. I feel like I've had so many.
Sure,
but also what was great is that there was this small little opportunity to make hearing people at that time during COVID, which was awesome, is that so many people were also having a little bit of a tough time understanding people with masks, you know? And I said to people, now you know what it's like. And I mean, like a tiny bit of what it's like to be me or someone with hearing problems. Imagine people mumbling and then being muffled and, you know, and then having like another sound barrier. I mean, it's impossible, right? And I think that really resonated with a lot of people at the time because all of a sudden, hearing loss was a little more relatable to a normal person.
Sure.
As opposed to being something abstract, you know?
Right. Let me ask you, going back to when you were 28 and this happened, I mean, did it happen gradually and you were wondering what is wrong, or was it coming on very fast, or how did this happen?
It came on very quickly. And what had happened is when I was younger, my previous incarnation in life, I was a top model and I was always going on locations. I was traveling and I wound up getting the girl that I had worked with, and we sat on the plane. She didn't tell anybody. She ended up that she had pneumonia, walking pneumonia. And at the time, I didn't really think anything of it. Now, I don't even know if it was pneumonia that she had, but that was her story, and she was sticking to it. And I came back from that trip, and I wound up about like within a week getting extremely ill. I mean, like deathly ill. And when you're young like that, you're very cavalier about your health and about, I was like, it'll go away. It'll get better. It'll go away. And I wound up having an extremely high fever for, I guess it went into almost 2 weeks. And my doctor's not sure if that's what did me in or if it was the virus. But whatever it was that happened after that event, I was sick for like 3 weeks total. My friends were like, hey, Nadine, we've been calling. I used to go to the Hamptons a lot. And, there are a bunch of people in New York. It's quite common. You get a big house, there's a bunch of people, everyone has a room. So, my friends were like, hey, you're calling. And I wasn't responding, and they were like, hey, what's going on with you? You didn't hear us. You didn't hear us call you when you were out at the pool. You didn't. And I thought maybe my ears had a wax buildup or something. I thought, okay. And they were like, you better get that checked. And I dragged my feet a little. I got it checked. And I was stunned to learn at the time that I went to see an ENT specialist. And he said to me, yeah, the hearing loss you have is permanent. And I suggest you get a cochlear implant. I was like, what? I couldn't believe it. I couldn't, to the point that I booked out. I called my agency. I said, I'm still sick. I flew home to see my mom and here in Montreal. And she arranged for me to see a specialist. And he said the exact same thing. And I mean, I think I felt like the rug had been pulled from underneath me. And, when you're not expecting something whatsoever. And I just didn't know how to process that at all. And my mother, God bless her, really, really helped pull me through all of that. And then, I got hearing aids and that helped. And then I was able to get really small ones that went inside your ear. So you couldn't see them, they weren't outside. And I can't say they worked fantastically well, but they were well, it was good enough that I could continue working as a model without anyone really knowing.
And were you concerned about stigma, given that you had these hearing aids? Like you're saying, it was good enough, so maybe people didn't know. So if they did know, again, that was a concern that might change some people's views of you. Is that right? You were a little concerned about stigma with the hearing aids?
Not a little concerned.
A lot
100% concerned. To the point that I went completely underground with it. I hid it. I didn't tell anybody. At the Late Show, I did end up telling one of the people that's like an executive producer and talent, and I had to tell her. I had no choice because we're doing live television, and I couldn't 100% guarantee that if they said something to me from far away, I needed to let her know. So that's why my scene partner Andrea got more of the dialogue often and stuff like that, just because she didn't want to stress me out, so that I could just, and actually, it just goes to show you that you could be deaf and do a career that a normal person normally would do, and you wouldn't think live television would be open to someone like me. And because I had already done the show, and I just didn't say anything to anybody, but I did it. I didn't mess up. I didn't slow anything down. I was completely 100% able to do the job just like my scene partner, even though I was functioning with about 20% hearing.
Right. Wow. Okay. Right. Well, look, I wanted to ask you, just as a bit of an aside for a moment, because I'm sure a lot of viewers, watched David Letterman, really enjoyed the show. I'm certainly one of those people. And I know you were mentioning to me before that he was actually recently in town, so you got to catch up with him. But I'm wondering if you have any little anecdote or anything you'd like to share about what it was like to work with him. It must have been super exciting, I would imagine. So,
well, I think first of all, I was just talking to Rupert G, the Hello Delhi guy, because I'm still in touch with Rupert. He's so wonderful as well. Actually, everyone. I have to say, everybody hands down that I worked with at the show, just terrific. And I mean, and Dave has just been always such a pleasure and so wonderful to me. Yeah, I really feel blessed that that's the job that I ended up doing, and that it was just, who knew at the time that we were creating something that in the future was going to be considered like the golden era of late night talk show. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think any of us could have imagined the way things that were going to turn and change. And I have to just say, it was so much fun. And I got to meet some of, everybody. I mean, authors, directors, actors, actresses, musicians, rock stars, I mean, hockey players, the football guys. I mean, it was just endless. And I have to say, one thing that was pretty terrific is that I was impressed to learn in my life through this experience that usually the more gifted and talented someone is, the kinder they seem to be. And down to earth, like just incredibly kind and nice. I mean, I wasn't expecting that, like I really, because sometimes you meet people and, they might, have delusions of grandeur for whatever reason.
Sure.
Because they did like one song or, but then you meet these people who have had like legendary careers and they're just wonderful, and it really, really brought home to me in life that, just keep it real, keep your feet on the ground. Anyway, it was just extraordinary being able to be on the show. And then some crazy characters that were there that were always like, whoa, like Jim Carrey, he'd come on and he'd just be like,
that's amazing.
Fireball, and also, oh my God, what's his name? And unfortunately, he passed away. The Mork and Mindy guy.
Robin Williams.
Yeah, another one and delightful, just such a nice man. But he'd come on, and he'd just be like, whoa, like a fireball, like, whoa, wow.
That's great.
But it was just wonderful. It was just really, really interesting time of my life. And to watch my boss, David, every single night come into people's homes and just kill it.
Fantastic.
Night.
Right.
And he was always on, that man. I don't know how he did it, because it's exhausting. And he had to prepare, if you think about it. I mean, yes, did he have people? I had a lot of people working for him that would prep for the shows and stuff. But still, he had to watch the movie. He had to figure out the book, because otherwise,
sure,
you can't really talk about something.
Yeah,
you don't know it.
No, that's amazing. No, it's incredible to hear some anecdotes. I wanted to ask you then, so after the Late Show and as you pursued your career, how did hearing, you had the hearing aids and how did your journey with hearing loss but using the hearing aids progress? And then we'll get to obviously COVID and how that changed things dramatically again. But what about after the Late Show for, quite some time, and you had the hearing aids then? Were you as conscious about them then, depending on in your profession, or were you?
Well, I left the Late Show because I was pregnant with my son. So that's why I left the show. And Dave was like, anytime you want to come back, the door is always open. But, I
wanted to mention something, and you touched on it briefly too. I mean, you and I met years ago because Audra Rainey, who was running Worldwide Hearing, founder of Worldwide Hearing and ran it for, I believe, 15 years. And I was a board member. They used to do screenings and they used to go to different communities to do that. And I know their statistics, I think, are something like, the World Health Organization talks about 430 million with people with debilitating hearing loss, and like 94% can be helped with that, right? And I know we were speaking about.
I have like 1.5 billion people.
1.5, okay.
Live with some degree of hearing loss, but the 430 million considered disability. Sorry, and that by 2050, they're estimating nearly 2.5 billion people.
Yeah. It's incredibly large numbers, right? Affecting so many people around the world. And as you say, and I know on the Worldwide Hearing site, they were always focused on the debilitating part, but the broader part is huge unless people get that help with some form of hearing aid, I think. And I just mention it because just a quick anecdote on my side, which has always stayed with me. I had a chance to go to Peru with Worldwide Hearing and my daughter. And when we did the screenings, there were audiologists who came from Switzerland, and they were bringing hearing aids based on previous screenings, in the months before. So there was one girl who was 17 who, she had never heard really properly in her lifetime. She grew up in school being bullied. She was a couple of years, classes or grades early, or held back. And her sister was there and her mom was there, and they were so emotional, and all of us were too, because when the audiologist started asking if she could hear and answer the questions, she could. And this was really the first time, that she could do that. And her mom was saying her sister was her best friend, and all was there for her because she was she was facing stigma. She was kind of pushed aside and stuff like that. So that's one story among countless ones, I'm sure. But you know, hearing, you know, about your journey, and we're going to hear more throughout the rest of this podcast, is so important, to also give hope to people who may have, you know, may be struggling with certain forms of anxiety or depression given their condition, or may need some encouragement to reach out to others who have dealt with some similar things.
Well, I think what's really important, if my hearing journey has taught me anything, because recently, 8 months ago, I received the cochlear implant because during COVID, the second time I got COVID, it wiped out my sense of smell, my sense of taste, and also attacked my hearing. So for me, with only 20% hearing, I was like, you know, terrible. And eventually in time, my sense of smell, my sense of taste came back. My hearing came back 14% in my right ear. But in my left ear, it went down to 4 to 8%. You know?
That's almost nothing, right? That's
so
yeah.
I was now, if I wasn't deaf before, I was completely deaf now, you know, and it was, you know, I thought life was challenging previously. I can't lie. I can't say that I ever felt that my daily experience was an easy one, you know. I mean, it was easy if I was alone, but if I was with people, it was always a struggle, you know, and it was always an effort. And I have to say, one thing that I find very interesting about so many of your podcasts is about this notion that you always put out there of, you know, reaching out. But if you're hiding something, you can't reach out, right?
Sure.
I didn't want anyone to know that I was deaf because I had had a couple of negative encounters earlier on in my hearing loss journey. And also, you know, like in weird places, let's say I went to the hospital or something and I'd say, oh, I noticed people treat you differently. And it's not treating you at the same level as when you walked in. It's always a step down, you know? So I just learned to hold it in. And unfortunately, when you do that, you can't go out, like you say, and reach out and ask people, you know, help me.
Sure.
Because, you know, if you say that, suddenly you're telling them what the problem is.
Right.
You know?
I think it's a hugely important point, and I want to kind of clarify a little bit on that, because for me, you know, using this bench press analogy, right? You only need one person to help you lift it. So everybody in the world would get pinned eventually because they're going to break. And so maybe a distinction I've always felt, although maybe I don't make it clear enough too, is just, you know, you don't have to open the kimono, so to speak, to the world, but ideally you can think of at least one person you trust, you know, that you could talk to. And that's exactly. So that's really, and I should be maybe a bit more nuanced in an explanation, because I'm not suggesting to people, oh yeah, that the world's going to greet them with open arms when they tell everybody, because for sure some people are going to be right after them, or you know, they're going to make their lives difficult. But you know, we all of us hopefully have somebody we care about, and then they care about us, I think, you know, and if not several people and family and stuff, and you got to be able to go somewhere, hopefully.
Well, I think what's interesting too, that life has taught me now, is that when you do that kimono moment that you said, you know, all of a sudden it gives you a shift. And, you know, you were mentioning a couple of times now about your relative who's 105, and he says happy birthday to himself every day. And actually, I was gonna say when we started I was going to say happy birthday because I wanted to reference him because I think that's so spectacular. What an inspiring man. But I think that, and you went in and discussed reframing, So I think that when you finally get the courage and self-acceptance, because that's a tough one. I don't know why it's so hard to accept yourself in life the way you are, as opposed to the way you want to present to the world, right? I mean, I guess too, from my previous incarnation and career, people looked at me a specific way.
Sure.
I liked that, I liked that prestige that came with that. I liked the acceptance that immediately came with that. Sure, did I want to give that up? No.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that it's amazing how in life sometimes you don't want to accept,
Sure.
what is going on, and you want to continue the facade. You want to continue, the whatever, and then when you finally decide, okay, you know what, this is exhausting, I can't, or that life throws you again, another curveball. So you're like, oh my God, I can't even pretend anymore because it's too hard. And I have to just come out. I have to just come out and say it. And I have to say that in the beginning, I was terrified. It would make me almost want to throw up, after I'd say it, because it made me so nervous because I'd been holding it in for so long. And then when I started to just tell people, and people that I knew, like, I was living in Westmount, and, I was a member of Hillside Tennis Club. I mean, so I was very social. And people actually thought I was lying at first. They didn't even believe me because I was so good at pretending to be a hearing person that no one even had a suspicion. They just thought maybe I was a little kooky, or maybe sometimes that I was a snob because I didn't hear them say something. So they thought I was just rejecting them or something. I don't know. So, but all of those things were better to me than them knowing I was deaf. Like, but when I finally let it out and just honest, an amazing thing happened. Like, it's almost like the universe realigned in my life. And suddenly people would say to me, well, I don't want anyone to know this, but I can't really hear with my right ear. And I was wondering, and so it started, all of a sudden, all these people started to be very candid with me and honest about hearing loss and their own experience. And I was able to help them. I hooked them up with my audiologist. I hooked them up with my hearing aid specialist. And I think also I realized, oh my God, I'm changing the dialogue.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'm dislodging the stigma, because people look at me, and even today, I'll be at a party, I'll be somewhere, and I might say, because even with my cochlear, really loud environments are still very challenging for me. And I'll say, well, I'm sorry, I'm deaf. So when you speak in this environment, it's a bit tough. So if you don't mind, I have a little microphone that connects to my cochlear, and, just pretend you're being interviewed or something. I try to make it funny so that, or I say to them, can you speak clearly so that I can read your lips, And they all go, oh my God, you're deaf? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you don't look deaf. And I'm like, well, what is a deaf person supposed to look like?
Exactly. Right. No. Well, you pointed out before, if there's 1.5 billion people in the world, with some form of hearing loss, then, this is a massive community. So I think it's wonderful that you've chosen to, bring it out there and share this podcast right now too, which is which will make certain people reflect on their own, I guess their own approach in society. I want to ask you a bit more about the cochlear implants and how that process went. And I think technology does continue to improve dramatically. So just any comments you have.
So I received, because we live in Canada, so I got my cochlear from the government, and they go through a whole vetting process, which I passed through. And 8 months ago, I received my cochlear. But prior to getting it, and I was terrified of getting my cochlear. I was so nervous about having the surgery. And they also try to prepare you psychologically that they can't guarantee the results, So they make you go into it with very low expectations, And I decided before my operation, because I wasn't sure what was going to happen. But I was at a point with my hearing that I had nothing to lose. And the government will only do one ear at a time. So, which is fine. I'm very happy with it. I'm not complaining. But I decided to move to the country. I moved to Knowlton in the Eastern Townships because I thought my thinking was, okay, if I get the cochlear and it doesn't work for me and it's a nightmare, I can become a hermit in the country and, just disappear into nature. I don't have to see anybody. I just didn't want to put extra pressure on myself. And I wanted to be able, because I think most of my life, I have always tried to make lemonade. No matter what's happened, okay, maybe at first it's bitter and it's not great, but then eventually you have to say, okay, how can I make this into lemonade? Because everyone has problems.
Yeah, right.
Not any more special than anyone else. And often people are suffering like I was, and no one knew, right? Did anyone know I was deaf? No. They probably looked at me and had conjured up a whole narrative. And meanwhile, I was struggling. I'm deaf. I can't understand, but I didn't show it. I was very stoic, So I think it's very important for all of us to remember that it's almost impossible to know what anybody at any given moment in time is going through.
Right.
And if you are, God forbid, going through something challenging, and believe me, as you and I both know, you're always going to have some kind of challenge. It's just the way it is. And I think that's what makes life exciting, because if it was all just perfect all the time, I'm sure we'd all be bored out of ourselves. We'd get older, So I think the fact that I really am a firm believer that God never gives us more than we can chew, and what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So I think too that another podcast you had, I can't remember Diego, what his last name was.
Well, Mariscal from the US, who's
Yes.
he has the incubator for
and he said having a disability was a superpower. And I thought, I think in some ways he could be right, because when you lose something, you gain something else. So for me, what I gained was an incredible ability to read people without understanding anything they were saying. So, I became really astute at picking up on body language, facial expression, and I could often, the only thing was that sometimes people would say stuff and their actions were contradicting whatever was coming out of their mouth. That was the only thing, but I guess that's a superpower ability, to be able to catch things that no one else is picking up on. So, I thought that was an interesting perception.
Absolutely.
That he had. But okay, so getting back to my cochlear, so I got off topic for a second. So, wow. It's just been 8 months. So I'm still in the process of, learning how to redefine my life because my cochlear is, establishing new parameters for me. And
Maybe if I can stop you for 1 sec, because I'm aware of what that is, but I'm not sure that, all of our listeners would be fully aware of what cochlear implants are. And so I don't know if you can just describe it a little bit for people.
well, without getting too technical, basically a cochlear implant is like a brain surgery. So they come and they implant, I think there's 17 electrodes. I wound up going with Cochlear Americas. There's 3 major cochlear implant manufacturers, Medal, Cochlear, and what's the, I'm blanking on the third one, but at any rate.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and it's a phenomenal technology in that what they do is they block your natural ear. They, disconnect it. And instead, they place the cochlear implant inside. And it bypasses your natural, your cochlear. And it goes into your brain and it sends information from, I'll take it off for a second, but then I don't know if you can see it.
Okay. Yeah, I can see it.
So hold on, because I can't hear you. I mean, I can hear you, but I won't be able to understand. Did I turn it off? No. Okay. So, and I'm lucky because at first, again, I was a little upset because I met another woman who was also a candidate, and she got implanted 10 months earlier than me.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's not fair. That's like, but what ended up happening then, as luck would have it, is I get approved, and just before my surgery, like 4 or 5 weeks prior, Canada approved the new Nexa implant, which is the first AI smart technology implant that Cochlear had.
Wow.
And
Okay.
I was going to get implanted with it. And I couldn't believe it. I thought, well, never complain because you just got to trust the path,
Sure.
sometimes.
Amazing.
And yeah, so I got the cochlear, and 10 days later I was activated, and they tell you that, they can't tell in advance if you're going to understand speech right away, or if it's going to be a series of beeps and blobs and whatever. And it usually takes up to 1 year for your brain to be able to understand speech again. So,
how long is the wait? Sorry, how long is the wait between? You said you only do one at a time. So how long do you have to wait between putting one and doing one and then doing the other one?
That's a very good question. Well, I mean, now that it's been so successful, but even still, you just would go back on the wait list like everyone else, and you'd have to, be put through. And then I guess the government decides, does she really need it, or can someone else? Because don't forget, there's children, that need to go first. And I think they're more important than I am in terms of getting it because of how much development loss they experience.
Super.
Can't understand language. But so at activations, I was just like crying because I couldn't believe it. I understood everything for the first time since losing my hearing. She spoke, the audiologist, and she covered her mouth. And usually, forget that, I couldn't understand. I understood everything she said. Now, did it sound natural? No. Did it sound weird? 100%. Did it sound far away and distant and foreign? And it was just the weirdest sound experience I'd ever had. But the most important thing is that I got every single word she said. So out of the box, I was able to understand 86% speech. Now I'm at 96%. Today,
Amazing.
for example, because I had done Zoom meetings before my surgery, and I could only survive with closed captioning happening while we would be doing our chat. And now I don't even use it anymore. So it's just, and another thing I wanted to say. So you had an incredible couple on that do sound baths and sound.
Yeah. Yeah,
What are
that's
they?
right. So they run the frequency school.
That's
And
it. The frequency
yeah,
school. So
yeah.
for a cochlear implant person, music is still a little bit uneven. Okay. So sometimes it's not 100% pleasurable, but I'm teaching myself. I'm not giving up. I keep forcing myself to listen. I don't think I could do a sound bath experience. But one thing that has been off the charts for me is, as you could imagine, since losing even more of my hearing, the world became a very quiet place for me. Okay. So, and I have a place in the country because before I used to go back and forth to, Westmount to the townships. And I often would walk around in nature. Plus, my house was surrounded by woods, so there's lots of nature. But it was always a very quiet experience, almost, like meditation, contemplative experience. I get my cochlear, and I was with my son, and the first thing I remember going like, "What is that?" And my son said, "Oh, mommy, that's the wind." I was like, "The wind? That was the wind?" And he was like, "Yes." And I could hear the leaves rustling, and I couldn't believe it. But the most significant thing was the birds. I could hear, and now I walk, I go outside, and I can hear the full chorus, the full extent of the birds singing around me, which has just been
That's amazing.
nothing short of a miracle. And the man that was on the podcast said about birds.
That was Major. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
Major is a recording artist and producer, and Martina Fuchs. They're both really wonderful people.
Right. And he said that when you hear birds, birds only sing when it's a peaceful time. And I thought, well, okay, maybe I can't understand. No, I can understand. Maybe music still is not 100%, right? There's trade-offs. But birds, and when he said that, I thought, okay, I'm all right. I can hear the birds singing. I can hear cochlear has given me, if nothing else, the birds singing.
That's wonderful.
I'm sorry.
It's beautiful, and it's a reminder of sometimes when these things are taken away, then the great appreciation that we come to. I mean, it's back to my dad's cousin Alf, which I always felt it was so poignant, because the guy, he was running out of time. He knew that. Like he tried to sleep properly, eat properly, exercise, but at 105, that you're running out of time. So he's very appreciative of the time he has, so.
Well, and I don't take, and especially right now, I mean, I never took sound conversation because so much of my life since losing my hearing has been, unfortunately, feeling like I was an island, and like I was isolated, because when you don't have the ability to always understand and to hear speech and communication, even I was always going in group situations anyways, and I go to movies with my friends just because I wanted the experience, not because I could hear anything, but I wanted to be with my friends. I didn't want
Sure, of course.
to a person who, stays home alone all the time.
Sure.
But one thing that I think is wonderful about ears and eyes and, words is really that they act as a bridge between your soul and yourself and who you are and your ability to connect with other people, and that's so beautiful. And the cochlear has allowed me to have a bridge again that I can just, walk across, dance across, have other people join me. I mean, it's wonderful. I can hear again, and I don't have to be tense anymore when I hear, I don't have to be like, oh my God, I have never met this person before. How are they going to talk? What's the rhythm? I don't have to control conversations, because before, that's another little trick that, hearing impaired people do, is that, and I want to say something, because I know sometimes deaf people get very upset if you use the word hearing impaired. And I really respect deaf people, being one myself, but I wasn't born this way. So I think for me, I've never really perceived myself as deaf, even though I am deaf. It's not, I always thought of myself as a hearing person who couldn't hear, and not someone necessarily with a disability. And I have had most of my experience has been in the hearing world. And I think that that's where I can make the biggest difference, is with the hearing community, because, I can sensitize people to what it's like to be on this journey that I'm on. But I noticed that when I would say I'm hard of hearing, people just didn't get it. If I said I was deaf, people would be like, oh, do you want me to use sign language? I was like, no. So hearing impaired seems to be a title or a name that to hearing people, let's say,
Right, sure.
that they understand, because then they know you're not deaf, but you don't hear. You're somewhere in a gray area in between. I came up with the sonically challenged to try, but it's not widely understood or, used. So I think I refer to myself, and I've met many other people who are also hearing, who lost their hearing, and they also use hearing impaired. So I just want to say, I hope I'm not trying to offend any deaf person. As you know, I'm deaf myself, but I'm comfortable referring to myself that way. I know it might not be 100% PC, but sometimes my goal is to where I know I'm going to fit in and make the biggest difference is in the hearing world. And in the hearing world, that's a term that they readily understand without me having to go into a whole explanation.
We've covered a lot of ground, and I just want to make sure I give you time, though, if there's any other topic that you did want to talk about today that we really haven't touched on. So I wanted to mention that.
Well, I think that one thing I'd like to say is I know that there's been a lot of pushback against AI, and that a lot of people are afraid of AI. That as someone who's been recently implanted with a device that has AI, I think for the future of people with disabilities or hearing loss, I don't know about vision, but I'll focus on what I know, which is hearing loss. And one of the biggest struggles, even for me today, that I face is noisy environments. I would embrace technology, AI coming in and going into my device and being able to say, scan and say, no, this is a loud environment. I don't have to hear that noise down there. I don't have to listen to the people behind us. I don't, and it could focus in on one person that I'm facing or that I'm looking. I mean, it does much better now do that, but there's still a lag. And I think as AI continues to develop, I think it's going to be a game changer in hearing aids, cochlear implants. There's also a company called Shoebox, which is a Canadian company.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Are you
I'm
familiar
smiling
with
because I know that the gentleman. I'm just trying to think. He went down to Peru with Worldwide Hearing with us years ago, and people from the Ottawa General and what's his name again? Broderick, maybe? No. I think the founder is a guy who is
don't
at a
know.
hospital in Ottawa.
Okay, yeah, they're in Ottawa. But I mean, how amazing is that technology and the company they're developing? Imagine a future where, all you need is an iPad and the little headphones that he has. And you could literally go and reach out to so many people who are, let's say, elderly homes where people aren't that mobile. I did a whole program at Chez de Riz where I met over 200 women over a period of 2 days. And actually, I learned a lot about hearing loss that I hadn't contemplated. Did you know that a lot of those women have hearing loss because they were victims of domestic abuse? So I mean, that's a whole other topic, but nonetheless, I mean, it's so, and the shelters often, they don't even ask.
Right.
They don't inquire at all into someone's, like, maybe this person doesn't hear well. Maybe that's why they're not responding. It might not be, a mental issue
Sure.
or a personality disorder. It could just be hearing loss. So the shoebox, imagine if you could go into a place, any shelter or Shadoras, or, and you could bring those tests so easy. Go in, test people right where they are, get their hearing tested, and then, have an audiologist or AI flag it and go through it. Right? I mean, it could be amazing. I mean, I really think there's a lot of work to be done in the future. I'm optimistic.
Right. That's awesome. No, so important and great examples. Well, I think again we've covered a lot of ground, Nadine.
Yeah.
And
Sorry if I went on and on and on.
No. It's all great, and appreciate you sharing your journey and lots for people to be inspired by, and it'll be great with what you've experienced that you aspire and will continue being a hearing advocate and helping bridge understanding, which is fantastic. So
yes. I think too, Jeff, it's so important that no matter what you're going through, you just have to have faith in yourself. You have to have faith in life. You have to trust that we're all on a journey, that we all are going to have things that happen, and don't let it define you. Don't let it define you. And more importantly, don't let other people define you. Don't let what they think be more important than who you are.
Absolutely.
Don't let them. Don't give them that. You keep that for yourself.
Key points. Thanks so much, Nadine. It's great to have you as our guest.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for giving me so much time. And if I can leave the viewers with anything, please go out there and get your hearing tested. It doesn't hurt. It's just such a great thing to do, because then you'll have a roadmap for the future in case anything happens. And you should get your hearing tested at least every 5 years. It should be mandatory. I'm shocked that it's not, but it's important. And now they've even linked Alzheimer's and dementia with hearing loss. So, undetected hearing loss. And that if you just do something simple like getting a pair of hearing aids, that, you lower the risk of getting dementia. So I hope everyone checks their ears. That's all.
Great advice. Right. Thanks again. Take care, Nadine.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day. Thanks, everyone, for listening and being part of my journey. All right. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks. Bye-bye.